Do you ever worry? I mean, did you ever come close to being caught or found out?
Uh, More or less, yes. Uh, my grandfather sent my brother and I uh, when I was 6 years old, and things were getting pretty uh, dangerous living in Berlin. He had a pretty good idea what was going to happen, and he sent us to a summer camp in northern Germany on the North Sea. It's about 200 miles north of Berlin. And uh, he sent us there for the summer to be safe. Well, the summer turned eventually into 11 or 12 years, and we stayed there. And there was a wonderful lady who became my second mother. Her name was Tante Irma, and she took care of us and told everybody that she adopted us. We were just regular boys. We were adopted. And there were many times that people from the Gestapo and also probably from the SS would come to Tante Irma's house and ask questions about who are these boys? What are they doing here? You know, where are they coming from? And she somehow always found an excuse and found a story and got rid of them. So we were very lucky in that respect. Also, what helped us a lot was our teacher. Our teacher, who I had for 8 years. This was a small village school, you have to remember. The whole school consisted of 2 classrooms, first to fourth grade in one and fifth to eighth in the other. After 8 years, your education was finished. And my teacher, I had all these 8 years, happened to be an SS person. He belonged to SS, but he knew who we were, and he was friendly with only one person in that village, and that was the lady who took care of us, our Tante Irma, my mother, my second mother. And they actually became good friends, and they protected us, and they helped each other in doing so. And Herr Pille means Mr. Pille, who was my teacher. As I said, he was in the SS. He taught us every morning. He taught school. And then at noon, we all had to go to work. And I can tell you a little bit about what the work in a minute, but we had to go to work, and he would get on his motorcycle and his black SS uniform and ride off for his SS duties. Exactly what they were, I have no idea. So these are the 2 people who, and of course, my grandfather did it all. He saved us. And he, of course, paid the camp for our being there until he himself was killed during the war. And yeah, this is, as far as the Hitler Youth is concerned, that's just the way it went. And it wasn't really that terrible to us, except that we had to listen to all this garbage every day about how terrible the Jews are and what they do, and we got to get rid of them, and so on and so on. And of course, we knew it because these were our people, our neighbors. One day they were living there, and the next day they were gone. You know, the Nazis would take them off in a train and send them to Auschwitz or Birkenau or some other camp at that time. And these were terrible times for us. So all of our friends, and they all, one after the other, kind of disappeared. And they were all eventually all ended up in a concentration camp. My mother, she left Germany and went to Czechoslovakia, which at that time was still a fairly safe place. And she lived there for a year or two in exile, so to speak, and wrote letters to us, wrote letters to our Tante Roma, which those letters I still have. And my mother stayed in Prague and lived there until finally Hitler also came into Czechoslovakia and took over that country. So now all the Jews were being killed in Czechoslovakia also. So my mother somehow got back to Germany and came back to Berlin where her parents were still living. And there was a short period of time where she had rented a place, a house, and brought Peter and me back for a short period of time to live with my mother. And one day my mother sent us on an errand. And when we came back on the subway, we lived right in the middle of Berlin, right in the center of Berlin. And when we came back and out of the subway and came around the corner to where our house was, we saw that the SS and Gestapo had several cars parked in front of our house and houses next to ours. And we had no idea what was going on, but we thought we better stay back. And after they're gone, we'll ask our mother, what were they doing there? What were they all in our house, you know? And well, as it happened, the SS and the Gestapo took my mother, put her in a car, and took her away. So my brother and I, we were still kids at that time, we were able to find out where they took my mother, and we actually found the prison after 3 days where she was being kept by the Nazis. And we went into the prison, and we were little kids, so I guess nobody paid much attention to us. And we found our mother in the prison in one of the cells. And we talked to her very briefly. She just told us to study and to be good boys and to pay attention in school. And by then we had to leave because some of the guards were coming around, and they did, and they started grabbing us. They finally woke up that who are these boys who are in the middle of this Nazi prison here? And we got away from them, Peter and I, and my brother and I. And we ran down the street, and they lost us, and we got away from them. And my mother had given us the name of an attorney in Berlin and said, if anything like this should ever happen and you're in trouble, you call this gentleman and he will help you. And we did. By the way, I never saw my mother again. That was the last time I saw my mother. She was taken to Auschwitz. And later on, through my teacher, the SS teacher that I had, he let my mother, my second mother, know that my mother, my real mother, was taken to Auschwitz and was killed there. So this is how things went on. And the last question you asked me was about the Hitler Youth. I don't know what else I can tell you about the Hitler Youth. It's an organization that we certainly didn't want any part of. My brother and I, we knew what was going on, even though we were kids, yeah, very young kids. We knew what was going on, but we had to play the game in order to stay alive. So we would have to go to all their meetings. We would have to wear their uniforms. I participated in sports events that they had. Matter of fact, I still have a piece of paper where I won second place out of 30,000 kids in throwing a hand grenade for distance, and we were supposed to throw it right down a certain line. And these are the kind of things that we had to do in order to stay alive, you know. And in the meantime, as I said before, all my family, one after the other, they were all taken by the Nazis, and they all ended up in concentration camps, and they were all killed there. My father was actually originally Catholic, but when he married my mother, who was Jewish, the Catholic Church said, you can no longer be a member of our church. So he no longer belonged to that church. And he worked for the Austrian government. He had a pretty high job, he was very friendly with the president of Austria. And they knew that Hitler's plans were to have an Anschluss, which means Austria would become part of Germany again. And this is what happened, of course. And prior to that happening, my father knew what was going to come, what's going to happen. He sent us to Berlin to our grandparents, who were still living there fairly okay in Berlin, because there were so many professors and doctors and Jews and so on. Eventually, of course, they were all thrown out, they were all killed, and they were no longer allowed to teach in universities or work in regular hospitals, except Jewish, what they call Jewish hospitals. And so my father and the president of Austria were put on the same train, and they were sent to a concentration camp called Sachsenhausen, which is right near Berlin, right outside of Berlin. And my father was there for about 2 or 3 years. He escaped twice. As a matter of fact, he and my mother came, before my mother died, came to Dangast, which is that little summer camp on the North Sea in Germany. And they came to visit us for a short period of times. They couldn't stay very long, because immediately when a middle-aged or young man would walk around, people would say, well, what's he doing here? Why isn't he in the army? Why isn't he, you know? So he would come and visit us, and then sometimes overnight disappear. And he was caught again, of course, by the Nazis, and ended up back in the same concentration camp.